There are names in OO that everyone knows. Names that carry stories, faces, memories. Finn, Marceline, Bubblegum, Simon. Even the Lich, for all his darkness, has a shape we can point to. A voice, a purpose, a will. But GOLB is different. GOLB is the name that holds no shape. It is not a person, nor a creature, nor a god in the way others are. To name GOLB is to admit that there are things language can't hold, things that exist before meaning, before story, before time itself. When we speak of GOLB, we are not describing something in the world, we are describing the world's limits, the boundary where sense dissolves. In the myths of OO, GOLB doesn't arrive, GOLB is. He doesn't act as much as he allows. His presence is not the sound of footsteps, but the stillness after sound. To understand him, you can't look at what he does, you have to look at what disappears around him. At first glance, he seems like a force of destruction. Wherever GOLB's shadow falls, worlds unravel, reason collapses, life turns strange and fluid, and yet, calling him evil misses something important. Evil implies intention, desire, choice. But GOLB has no hunger, no goal. His chaos isn't driven by will, it simply exists, like gravity or silence. He is not the darkness that opposes light. He is the vastness that allows light to exist at all. In OO, every being, from the smallest candy citizen to the greatest cosmic entity, defines itself by contrast. Prismo dreams because GOLB doesn't. Death ends because GOLB doesn't begin. The Lich strives for absolute purpose because GOLB represents the absence of purpose. GOLB is the background against which all of OO's colours appear. Without him, nothing could define itself, because there would be no difference, no tension, no question. He is, in a way, the silence between two notes, the pause that gives music rhythm. The first time anyone tries to describe GOLB, they fail. Even the wisest beings, the cosmic owl, Time Room, the old gods, treat him not as an equal, but as a mystery. GOLB doesn't belong to creation or destruction. He isn't part of the story. He's the blank page beneath it. This is why even those who study him end up whispering instead of explaining. Because to look too long at nothing is to risk seeing yourself fade into it. GOLB's very name resists comprehension. It sounds almost like a word, but not quite, like language halfway through forgetting itself. The syllables feel unfinished, unanchored. That's the point. GOLB's name is the sound of existence, trying to name what cannot be named. In some interpretations, the letters are said to stand for the four movements of creation and unmaking, Genesis, oblivion, life, and being, but those are only attempts to wrap meaning around the unshapable. The truth is simpler. GOLB is what remains when all words fall away. If we step back and look at the great pattern of OO, we can see GOLB everywhere, quietly shaping the edges of stories. Not through direct influence, but through his absence. The Lich's obsession with the end, a faint echo of GOLB's presence. Prismo's need to preserve existence through wish and dream, a response to the void GOLB represents. Even the way mortals cling to love, to meaning, to laughter, all of it is rebellion against him. GOLB doesn't command fear, he invites reflection. He forces the universe to ask, what am I if I can end? What am I if I was never meant to begin? That's the paradox at the centre of his being. He is not the destroyer of worlds. He is the truth that worlds were never stable to begin with. He reveals that all things, even gods, are temporary arrangements of energy and meaning. When GOLB appears, those arrangements dissolve, and what's left is the raw foundation of existence, formless, chaotic, infinite. In that sense, he is not the villain of U, but its purest philosopher. He reminds everything that calls itself alive that permanence was never part of the deal. It's easy to see why his presence terrifies mortals. We define ourselves through story, through beginnings, journeys, and endings. GOLB is what happens when stories lose their shape. When he comes, the world stops making sense. Form melts, words fail, and consciousness stretches thin. But this isn't punishment, it's revelation. GOLB is the universe showing its true face. A face that cannot be seen, only felt, a vast, unending awareness without ego or boundary. Those who've touched his power, Simon, Betty, the Lich, all emerge changed, because they've glimpsed what lies beneath reality's thin skin. To touch GOLB is to understand that existence itself is fragile and self-constructed. It's like looking behind the curtain and seeing that the play continues only because the audience keeps believing in it. And yet, this revelation doesn't have to bring despair. It can bring awe. Because if everything can collapse into nothing, it means everything is also endlessly possible. That's the secret hidden inside GOLB's chaos. Potential. The same energy that unravels the world also weaves it anew. Every end he brings creates the silence necessary for another beginning. His destruction isn't punishment, it's renewal, stripped of sentimentality. When kingdoms fall, when stars burn out, when even time begins to fray, what remains is GOLB's stillness, waiting for the next shape to rise. From this perspective, GOLB becomes not a monster, but a mirror. He reflects back to the universe its deepest truth, that nothing is guaranteed, that meaning is always borrowed, that existence is a fragile song played against a background of silence. It's frightening, yes, but it's also freeing. To know GOLB is to know that even the smallest moment, a joke, a song, a kind word, is a miracle, because it exists in spite of him. There's an ancient saying in the hidden corners of U's philosophy: to look upon GOLB is to see yourself unmade. But maybe that's not a warning, maybe it's an invitation. To be unmade isn't always to be destroyed. It can also mean being freed from illusion, from attachment, from the desperate need to control meaning. GOLB strips away the unnecessary, leaving only the truth that nothing lasts, and that this impermanence is not tragedy, but balance. When Betty merges with GOLB, she doesn't vanish, she transforms. Her act is often seen as sacrifice, but it's also understanding. She sees what others can't, that GOLB is not cruelty, but clarity. He's the stillness she chooses to inhabit, so that others may continue to move. In her, GOLB finds compassion. In him, she finds eternity. Through that unity, the universe remembers that even chaos can contain love. So, what does GOLB really represent? At the simplest level, he is everything that escapes comprehension. The wordless truth that underlies every story in U. He is not there to be fought or defeated, only acknowledged. To see him is to confront the quiet fact that all existence is temporary, all meaning self-made, and all beauty fleeting. But it's that very fragility that makes U and life so precious. When the people of U look into the sky and whisper his name, they aren't invoking doom. They're reminding themselves that order is a gift, not a guarantee. That peace is something we build, moment by moment, in the face of the great unknowable. In that sense, GOLB is not the end of the world. He is its beginning, endlessly repeating. Before there were words in U, before anyone could name love, or fear, or light, or time, there was a sound. Not a song, not a scream, just a trembling vibration that filled the void and had no meaning yet. It was the first movement of existence, and if you listened closely enough, beneath it there was something even quieter. the silence beneath sound, the place where all language breaks down. That silence is GOLB. We often think of GOLB as a creature that devours worlds, but what he truly devours is definition. Everything that is certain, everything that can be neatly explained, dissolves in his presence. He unthreads the sentences the universe uses to describe itself. If creation speaks, GOLB listens. If the world tells its story, GOLB is the quiet pause between every word, reminding all things that meaning is only borrowed, and silence is what remains when the telling ends. The beings of U live in stories. They depend on names to hold their shapes. Finn is the hero because someone needs him to be. Princess Bubblegum rules because her people call her ruler. Even the Lich, for all his hunger, only exists because the world knows the word evil. GOLB, however, stands outside that loop. He is not a name, but the collapse of names. When he appears, language stops working, meaning loses its edges, and all things return to the raw state of sound before interpretation. It's tempting to call that chaos, but that's too small a word. Chaos implies energy, motion, accident. What GOLB represents is deeper, the pure potential that precedes all choices. He is not disorder, he is pre-order. He is what the universe was before thought divided it into categories. The sound before music, the breath before speech. In a sense, every act of creation in U is an attempt to escape him. The Candy Kingdom is a declaration of definition, sweetness, structure, community, all things that GOLB's silence would erase. The Magic Kingdoms, the Dream Realm, even Death's domain, each is a wall built to keep meaning intact. And yet, every wall eventually cracks. Every spell unravels. Every kingdom falls into stillness. And in that stillness, GOLB waits, not out of malice, but because he never left. Some say that long ago, when the universe was young, the first words were spoken not by a god, but by a frightened creature trying to separate itself from the void. The first word was me. In that moment, awareness divided itself from silence. From that division came time, memory, desire. But that word, me, was a fragile invention. It could never erase what came before, the great, still hum beneath identity, the hum of GOLB. That hum is what every soul in U eventually hears, whether in dreams or death or the spaces between. It's the reminder that the stories we tell about ourselves are just translations, that beneath them everything speaks the same wordless language. When Prismo dreams, his dreams float in GOLB's silence. When death claims a soul, he passes through that same quiet threshold. Even love, at its deepest, touches it, that moment when two people sit together in silence and understand each other completely. GOLB lives in that silence too. For all his fearsome imagery, the distorted form, the shifting faces, GOLB's essence isn't noise. It's quiet. It's what happens when the world stops trying to define itself. That's why encountering him feels like losing your mind, because the mind itself is built from words. To touch GOLB is to touch something that has no shape for thought to hold. It feels like dissolution, but it's really exposure, seeing reality without its usual story. When Betty merged with him, she didn't just vanish into chaos. She entered that soundless state and brought meaning into it. For the first time, GOLB contained love. For the first time, the silence echoed back with feeling. Betty didn't change GOLB into something new. She revealed what was already hidden within him, that even nothingness can listen. That's the paradox at the heart of GOLB's existence. The more he takes away, the more clearly we can hear what's real. When language disappears, When story collapses, what's left is pure experience, the pulse of being alive, the awareness that doesn't need words. Finn felt this too, in the final quiet moments when Ooh trembled under GOLB's influence. The world stopped making sense. Monsters became children, fear became calm, chaos folded into colour. And yet, in that disarray, there was peace. A peace so vast it frightened him. It wasn't the peace of victory or understanding. It was the peace that exists when you stop asking for meaning, when you simply are. That peace is the most difficult thing for mortals to accept. We want stories to explain everything. We want beginnings and endings, heroes and villains, order and reason. But GOLB whispers that maybe existence doesn't need those things. Maybe meaning is not something found, but something we create in the face of his silence. Without GOLB, we would never need to tell stories. Without silence, there would be no music. The scholars of Ooh once wrote that GOLB's language, if it can even be called that, has no syntax. It is made of contradictions that cancel each other out, words that mean everything and nothing at once. To mortal ears, it sounds like distortion. But if you could translate it, it might read like a question. Can you still love, knowing this will all end? That's the essence of his message. Not a threat, not a curse, but a challenge. Because if meaning can only exist when we create it, then every act of kindness, every song, every friendship is an act of defiance against him. To speak, to build, to care, these are ways of saying, we hear you and we answer. GOLB gives us silence so that we have something to fill. His existence demands that we become creators ourselves. So perhaps GOLB is not the absence of story, but the reason story exists at all. He is the blank page every writer needs, the quiet between dreams that lets us rest, the stillness that gives weight to motion. He represents the first and final sound, the one the universe never stopped listening to. There's a strange kind of beauty in that idea, that even the void isn't empty. It's pregnant with potential, waiting to be shaped. That silence isn't death, it's the womb of sound. GOLB, in his vast stillness, is both the end of language and the beginning of every word. If you were to meet him, really meet him, you wouldn't see horror, you'd see reflection. The moment before thought, the sound before meaning. You'd hear your own heart echoing back, and for once, it would be enough. Every world that has ever existed, every sky that has ever turned, every soul that has ever opened its eyes, they all share one truth. What can be made can also be unmade. Ooh has always lived by that rhythm. Mountains rise and crumble. Empires bloom and fade. Love grows and quiets. Creation and undoing are not enemies. They are the two hands of the same being, one shaping, one releasing. And somewhere between those hands, GOLB waits. If creation is the act of giving form, then GOLB is the act of letting form go. He does not build, and he does not destroy in the way mortals imagine destruction as anger or punishment. He simply returns things to their natural state, potential. In his presence, what was solid becomes fluid again. The walls between living and dead, mind and matter, dream and waking, all dissolve back into the source. This is why his power feels so vast and so terrifying. Creation always flatters us. It tells us we are important. GOLB reminds us that importance is borrowed. Everything we build stands on borrowed time. And yet, that isn't cruelty, it's balance. Without dissolution, creation would suffocate under its own weight. Without endings, beginnings would never have room to bloom. GOLB is not the undoer of life. He is the breath that lets life continue. Consider the lich, obsessed with the purity of ending. To him, GOLB is perfection, a world cleansed of chaos, of life, of contradiction. But that understanding is wrong. The lich sees only one side of the pattern. GOLB is not pure destruction. He is the rhythm itself. The lich desires silence to be final. GOLB allows silence so that sound may rise again. One seeks to end, the other sustains by ending. This difference is subtle, but it's everything. When the lich speaks, he hungers. When GOLB manifests, there is no hunger at all. Just inevitability, the quiet exhale after creation's shout. Even the gods of U, for all their wisdom, misunderstand him. They fear his arrival, as if he were a storm that must be resisted. But GOLB doesn't fight, he balances. When the universe grows too rigid, too proud of its permanence, he softens it. When meaning becomes tyranny, he dissolves it. He restores the void so that imagination can return. To the Candy Kingdom, that sounds like apocalypse. To the cosmic mind, it's mercy. Because eternity without change is not paradise, it's stagnation. Life depends on decay to keep meaning alive. Every fruit that falls to the ground, every song that fades, every friendship that must say goodbye, they all echo the same truth. GOLB is not punishment. He is continuity. There's a lesson hidden in that for everyone in U, even if they never name it. Princess Bubblegum builds tirelessly because she knows one day it will fall. Finn keeps adventuring because he knows every adventure must end. Marceline keeps singing because she knows every note will fade into silence. Without GOLB's quiet pull, their joy would have no urgency. Their purpose would have no shape. When Betty merged with GOLB, she didn't enter a void of rage. She entered the stillness that lies between creation and undoing. In that space, time doesn't move. There's no before or after. It's the place where ideas rest before becoming things. To the living, it looks like destruction. But to the infinite, it's just maintenance. A cosmic cleaning of the slate. There's a scene that scholars of U love to describe. The moment when the world seemed to melt under GOLB's gaze. Buildings warped, faces fused, colours bled into one another. To many, it looks like horror. But if you look closely, it also looks like art, an abstract painting made of reality itself. Shapes and souls blending back into raw material. It wasn't ugliness. It was everything returning to its truest form. Possibility. This is the balance that defines the cosmos. Creation writes, GOLB erases. But the erasure is what makes more writing possible. In this way, he becomes the guardian of renewal. His silence ensures there's always room for something new to speak. You can hear this rhythm everywhere in U if you listen. The tide that comes and goes, the wind that builds and fades, the heartbeat that contracts and releases. Life itself is built on the pulse of undoing. GOLB is that pulse magnified to infinity. He is the reminder that permanence is not the goal. Flow is. The mortals of U tend to fear loss. They mourn decay as if it's betrayal. But GOLB's philosophy teaches that nothing is truly lost. It only changes form. When something breaks, it doesn't cease. It becomes the space for something else. The destruction of one kingdom nourishes the soil for another. The death of one age fertilizes the next. In this way, GOLB and life are partners in the same endless exchange. The paradox is that GOLB's chaos is what makes order meaningful. Without him, the world would freeze in perfection, and perfection cannot live. Creation and undoing are not opposites, but reflections. They depend on one another to exist, and GOLB is the mirror that keeps them aware of each other. Think of Prismo, a being of pure wish. His whole existence revolves around possibility. Yet even he must rest between wishes, returning to silence. That silence is GOLB's domain. When Prismo sleeps, the universe breathes. GOLB is the pause that allows all dreams to reset. To understand this balance is to understand the gentle truth of U's philosophy. Everything beautiful is fragile by design. Fragility isn't failure, it's proof of motion. The flower wilts, the tower crumbles, the song ends. But because of that, life feels precious. GOLB doesn't ruin that beauty, he defines it. Without him, nothing would end, and without ending, nothing would mean anything. This is why, when you strip away fear, GOLB becomes something close to peace. He is the natural exhale of existence, the soft returning home after the long inhale of creation. He is what lets the universe rest. Sometimes, when you look at a sunset in U, when the colours blur and the world seems to melt into quiet, that's GOLB too, not in menace, but in grace. The melting horizon, the fading light, all tiny rehearsals for the great undoing that keeps the cosmos alive. Even the bravest heroes feel it. Finn has faced monsters, gods, his own shadow. But what he truly learns to face over his long life is GOLB's lesson, to love something knowing it will pass away. That's the purest courage. Not the defiance of death, but the acceptance of transience, to create with the understanding that GOLB will one day unmake it, and to do it anyway. Because if creation is meaning, and GOLB is its erasure, then life itself is the dance between the two. We live in the movement, not the outcome. That's why U endures, not because it resists GOLB, but because it harmonizes with him. Every age of the world has risen from the ashes of the one before. Each ending becomes the seed of the next. When GOLB finally retreats into the fabric of the universe, when his presence fades and the world begins again, he leaves behind more than ruin. He leaves potential. He leaves the silence that invites the next voice to sing. And that's the truth, hidden in every corner of U. The song and the silence need each other. Creation gives us stories. GOLB gives us the space to tell them. He is the unmaker who ensures there's always something left to make. If GOLB is the silence that underlies existence, then the lich is the echo that tries to fill it. They are reflections of the same idea seen from different sides of eternity. Where GOLB simply is, the lich acts. Where GOLB embodies the stillness of unbeing, the lich is movement with no end, a hunger that can never be satisfied because it's trying to fill a void that doesn't want to be filled. The people of U often speak of the lich as GOLB's servant or fragment, but the truth is stranger. The lich isn't GOLB's creation, he's what happens when mortal minds try to interpret GOLB. To look upon something formless, a consciousness needs to invent form. So, the mind of U imagined a face for the faceless, a voice for the silent, a will for the indifferent. The lich was born from that misunderstanding, a distortion of chaos turned into purpose. He represents the fear of nothingness, translated into a desire for control. If GOLB is the universe's acceptance that meaning will always dissolve, the lich is the refusal of that truth. He wants the world to end so that he doesn't have to face what comes after. The lich seeks finality. GOLB embodies continuity. This is why their energy feels similar yet opposite. When GOLB appears, the air grows heavy but calm, as if time itself is holding its breath. When the lich appears, that same weight becomes agitation, the feeling of something that must act, must consume. The Lich's bones are made from the dust of forgotten ages. His words are shards of broken prayers. He is purpose without peace. Throughout U's history, his presence always follows GOLB's shadow. It's as if the universe, glimpsing its own silence, immediately creates a reaction, something that will move, rage, and speak against that quiet. The Lich becomes the universe's argument with itself, and in that argument, something beautiful happens. Life persists. Because of the Lich, heroes rise. Because of the Lich, courage and compassion exist. His very existence demands resistance, and resistance creates meaning. That is the strange mercy of GOLB's reflection. From the still void comes a monster who reminds the living how to live. There's an old myth told in fragments among the witches of U that the Lich was once a single thought drifting through GOLB's awareness, a thought that asked, what if nothing fought back? And the moment that question appeared, the void rippled, and from that ripple came fire, form, and fear. That question has never stopped echoing. The Lich is that echo made flesh. It's fitting, then, that the Lich always speaks in absolutes. His words are heavy, deliberate, almost ceremonial. The end. There is no life. Every syllable is an attempt to draw a border around the infinite. He wants the world to hold still, to stop changing. But the universe doesn't obey commands. It breathes, expands, dies, and begins again. GOLB represents that breath. The Lich wants to trap it. Their relationship is like light and shadow, inseparable, yet never merging. The Lich moves within GOLB's silence, and GOLB allows the Lich to exist, not as a servant, but as contrast. In that way, the Lich is almost tragic. He's a being born to fail. No matter how many times he brings ruin, U rebuilds. The stillness he craves slips through his fingers because true stillness doesn't belong to him. It belongs to GOLB, and GOLB doesn't crave anything at all. This is the irony that defines both of them. The Lich believes in a single final ending. GOLB believes in no endings at all. For GOLB, the dissolution of a world isn't an end, it's a transformation. The Lich seeks to freeze the cycle. GOLB keeps it spinning. The Lich is the sound of death screaming at silence. GOLB is the silence listening, unmoved. You can see their difference reflected in those they touch. The Lich infects with despair. His presence drains colour, will, and hope. GOLB, when felt through beings, like Betty or Simon, doesn't infect, he reveals. He shows the underlying truth beneath all illusion. The Lich forces his truth upon others. GOLB simply is, and lets you see what you are. Yet, for all their opposition, there's a kind of compassion in how GOLB allows the Lich to exist. In GOLB's infinite awareness, every mistake, every corruption, every scream is permitted. He never interferes, because even destruction has a place. The Lich's crusade, as terrible as it is, becomes another story, a spark of movement inside stillness. GOLB's lesson is that even opposition has meaning, even decay contributes to balance. When the Lich was finally absorbed, folded back into something gentler, it wasn't GOLB's defeat, it was reconciliation. The universe took its echo and turned it back into harmony. The endless argument between sound and silence ended not with victory, but with understanding. The Lich became part of life again, transformed into sweet pea, innocence reborn from terror. That transformation is GOLB's final statement. Even the embodiment of ending can begin anew. It's almost poetic, the way U heals itself through contradiction. The Lich tries to erase life, and from his erasure, life emerges purer than before. Each failure of the Lich is a reminder that GOLB's quiet cannot be broken. You cannot destroy what never sought to exist. You can only return to it. For all his grand speeches about death, the Lich's flaw is his need to matter. GOLB has no such need. That's what makes him terrifying and serene. The Lich burns with purpose. GOLB is beyond purpose. And perhaps that's the greatest difference between them. The Lich is still human, in a way. Still a creature of narrative, of wanting and fearing. GOLB is the space after desire ends. There's something beautiful about seeing the two not as enemies, but as stages. Every life, every civilization, every idea passes through them both. Creation gives birth to fear, fear of loss, fear of chaos, and that fear becomes the Lich. But beyond the Lich, beyond fear, lies GOLB, the still acceptance that nothing is ever truly gone. It's tempting to believe that good must defeat evil, that light must erase darkness. But the stories of suggest something more complex. Good and evil are movements in a single song. GOLB and the Lich are the same melody, one sustained note and one sharp chord, both necessary for the harmony of existence. So, when the Lich returns to silence, when his skull crumbles and his voice fades, he isn't erased, he's fulfilled his role. He has reminded the universe how precious it is to exist at all. GOLB doesn't celebrate or mourn. The silence simply continues, patient, waiting for the next note to rise. And maybe that's the deepest truth about GOLB's mirror. The Lich teaches us to fear endings. GOLB teaches us to embrace them. Between the two, keeps breathing, destroying, rebuilding, loving, forgetting. The void doesn't win or lose. It listens. It allows. It waits for life to start singing again. There's a fear that lives quietly in every corner, of in its heroes, its kings, its monsters, its lovers. It's not the fear of death or pain or loss. It's deeper than that. It's the fear that everything, all of it, the kingdoms, the songs, the laughter, the love, might not mean anything. That all of our stories are just temporary flickers against an endless silence that will one day swallow them whole. In that fear has a face. That face is GOLB. When people imagine GOLB, they imagine terror, not because of what he does, but because of what he reveals. His presence strips away the comfort of story. Around him, cause and effect collapse, identity wavers, time folds in on itself. There is no narrative there, no why. Just being raw, wordless, indifferent. To glimpse, GOLB is to see the universe without meaning, and that is what mortals cannot bear. Meaning is the thread that keeps existence together. Finn's bravery, Bubblegum's science, Marceline's music, Simon's love, all of it depends on the belief that what we do matters. But GOLB doesn't speak that language. He represents the possibility that meaning was never written into the fabric of the universe at all, that it's something we invented to survive the silence. That's why mortals turn him into myth. The mind needs names for its fears, shapes for its anxieties, so GOLB becomes a god of chaos, an enemy, an explanation. It's easier to imagine him as a being with intent than to accept that he might simply be the absence of intent. The idea that there might be no reason, no grand design, no moral balance, is more terrifying than any monster could ever be. And yet, this fear is what makes the world beautiful. Because if there is no given meaning, then every act of kindness, every creation, every love, becomes an act of rebellion. Every story told in is a light kindled against that darkness. The fear of meaninglessness is what pushes life to invent meaning anyway. GOLB is the question that makes every answer worth saying aloud. When Simon first brushes against that void, when he loses everything that gave his life coherence, he faces not just madness, but GOLB's lesson. Stripped of reason, of identity, of purpose, he becomes a creature of chaos himself. Yet, even then, somewhere inside that hollow shell, the impulse to love remains. That impulse is what saves him in the end. It's what proves that meaning can exist without guarantee. That's the paradox. GOLB shows that meaning is fragile, but in doing so, he makes it stronger. Because what we create in the face of nothingness has to come from somewhere real, not from rules or destiny, but from choice. When Finn saves his friends, when Marceline writes a song, when Bubblegum forgives herself, these moments shine precisely because they could have meant nothing, and yet they do. It's said that when Oo was first born out of the aftermath of destruction, there was a moment when everything hung in balance, chaos on one side, form on the other. The first living beings looked at the formless vastness, and instead of despairing, they began to name things. Naming was the first act of defiance against GOLB's indifference. Every word was a promise. This matters. But promises don't last forever. The fear always returns, whispering in the quiet. You can see it in the eyes of even the most powerful beings. Bubblegum builds endlessly because she's terrified that if she stops, her kingdom, her meaning, will fade. Marceline sings because silence scares her. Even Prismo, eternal and radiant, keeps dreaming because the idea of waking up to nothing is unbearable. They all, in their own way, are responding to GOLB's presence. And yet, none of them truly fight him, not anymore. They've learned that to live is not to defeat the void, but to coexist with it. GOLB doesn't go away, because the fear of meaninglessness doesn't go away. It's the background hum that keeps the heart beating. The more you try to deny it, the louder it becomes. But if you accept it, if you sit with it, it softens. It becomes a kind of peace. Betty understood this more deeply than anyone. When she merged with GOLB, it wasn't surrender, it was comprehension. She realized that trying to fix the universe, to force meaning onto it, only leads to suffering. So she let go. She embraced the silence, and in doing so, brought love into it. She turned fear into compassion. Through her, GOLB became not the void that erases meaning, but the space where new meaning can grow. That's the lesson Oo keeps teaching. Meaning isn't found, it's made. Every day, every choice, even knowing that it will fade, especially knowing that it will fade. The fear of meaninglessness becomes the engine of life, pushing the living to create something worth losing. The Candy Kingdom will one day crumble. Finn's stories will become myth, then dust. Even the stars above Oo will go dark. But while they shine, they matter. Not because some divine order decreed it, but because someone cared enough to see beauty in them. GOLB doesn't take that away. He gives it context. Without his silence, we would take our light for granted. In the deepest sense, GOLB is not the end of meaning, but its beginning. He is the question that awakens every mind. He asks, if nothing lasts, why love? Why build? Why sing? And Oo answers, over and over, because we can, because it's beautiful. That's what separates mortals from gods, not power, but courage. To live knowing that everything you love will one day dissolve into nothing, and to love anyway, is the bravest act in the universe. It's the one thing GOLB cannot undo. He can erase forms, unravel stories, silence voices, but he cannot erase the spark that chooses to speak in the first place. Even silence carries memory. Even chaos remembers harmony. When all things fade, the echo of kindness remains. faint but unbreakable. It's why, after every cataclysm, rebuilds. It's why every generation sings new songs about the same old fears. It's why GOLB's name, though it means nothing, still carries meaning for those who speak it. Perhaps that's the secret at the heart of it all. GOLB represents the fear that nothing means anything, but in his shadow, proves that everything can. The void gives life its contrast, and love gives the void its answer. So when the night grows still, when the stars seem far and the stories seem small, maybe GOLB isn't something to fear at all. Maybe he's just the silence that waits patiently for the next voice to begin. And maybe that voice, fragile, fleeting, human, is all the meaning the universe ever needed. Before there were kingdoms or names, before the sky had colour or the seas had salt, was a quiet hum. Matter drifted, time had not yet learned how to count, and there was only stillness, a stillness that would later be called GOLB. It wasn't darkness or emptiness, it was possibility waiting. Everything that would ever exist was already there, folded into the silence, like seeds sleeping in soil. No one knows what stirred first. Some say it was a sound, a vibration in the void that made the stillness ripple. Some say it was a thought, the first mind asking the first question, who am I? Others believe it was love, or loneliness, or curiosity. Whatever it was, that motion marked the birth of story. Because to tell a story is to move, to reach out, to make meaning where there was none. It's the first and oldest rebellion against GOLB's silence. Story is what separates from the void. It's what gives shape to chaos. When Finn picks up his sword, when Marceline sings, when Bubblegum builds, they are continuing that first act, the decision to speak into stillness. Story is how the world keeps itself awake, but story needs something to push against. If everything made sense, if life were perfectly ordered, there would be no reason to tell stories at all. The presence of GOLB, the endless silence beyond meaning, gives story its urgency. Every tale ever told in is a candle lit against his shadow. The fear that the candle might go out is what makes its glow so beautiful. The ancients of used to say that every myth is a conversation with GOLB. Each hero's journey, each creation myth, each song, all are responses to his question, what will you make of this silence? And answer has always been the same. We will make something worth remembering, even if no one remembers. It's easy to forget how fragile that act of storytelling is. Words are temporary. They vanish the moment they're spoken, and yet somehow they travel farther than anything else. A story can outlive its teller, cross centuries, even survive the end of the world. Because stories are not made of matter, they're made of attention, and attention, in its purest form, is love. When the first beings of learned to speak, they were doing something miraculous. They were taking chaos, the unshaped, the unknown, and giving it pattern. They were building bridges between themselves and the vast, quiet thing that had given them birth. Every myth of creation is secretly a myth of GOLB. The universe doesn't resist him. It converses with him through story. Even now, every storyteller in is part of that lineage. Finn telling Jake about an adventure, BMO making up a game, Marceline writing lyrics about her childhood. Each one is trying to make the world a little louder, a little more alive. They are not defying GOLB. They are answering him. And yet, what makes this exchange profound is that GOLB never speaks back. He doesn't need to. His silence is what makes the conversation possible. Every pause in a story, every blank page, every quiet night where nothing happens. Those moments belong to him. Without them, words would have nowhere to rest. Meaning would have nowhere to breathe. U's history shows this rhythm over and over again. Great empires rise and fall, and each time a new generation tells the old stories again. Sometimes they forget names or change endings, but the essence remains, the desire to make something meaningful in the face of impermanence. The land of U itself is built from recycled myths, ruins of one age becoming foundations of the next. It's the same story, told in endless variations, life making itself up as it goes. There's a secret understanding among the oldest beings in U, the ones who have seen worlds end and begin again. They know that GOLB isn't trying to erase their stories. He's simply resetting the page so new stories can be written. That's why destruction always carries a strange beauty in U. Every ending is also an invitation. The silence after collapse is the space for imagination to return. Even the gods are storytellers in their own way. Prismo dreams the stories of existence into being. Death watches them end. The cosmic owl keeps their echoes. And GOLB is the silence that frames them all, the listener who never interrupts. That's why Betty's merging with GOLB is such a profound act. When she enters that silence, she doesn't disappear. She becomes the story itself. Her love for Simon becomes part of the universe's grammar, woven into the quiet. She turns meaninglessness into narrative, the final fusion of chaos and compassion. In her, the storyteller and the silence become one. In the end, every being in U is both storyteller and story. We write ourselves as we live. Each choice is a sentence, each memory a chapter. When GOLB appears, it feels like the book closing. But perhaps that's an illusion. Perhaps he's only turning the page, because even GOLB's void has rhythm. The silence between one story and the next is part of the story itself. The night between days, the winter between blooms, all of it carries the same wisdom. Pause is not absence, it's preparation. This is the hidden kindness of GOLB. He does not destroy meaning. He gives it space to breathe. He keeps the universe from drowning in its own noise. Without him, stories would pile endlessly until they suffocated under their own certainty. His nothingness is a kind of mercy, a reminder that meaning only exists because it can end. If you listen closely to the quiet places of U, the desert after a storm, the ocean before dawn, the moment after a song ends, you can almost hear it. The faint pulse of silence, the sound before the next story begins. That's GOLB too, not as a god to fear, but as the oldest listener there ever was. So when the storytellers of U sit by the fire and begin again, when they whisper, "Once upon a time," they are not defying him. They are answering him. They are saying, "We hear your silence, and we choose to fill it." And maybe that's what story truly is, the universe dreaming aloud so it doesn't feel alone. In every story told in U, there is at least one moment where someone stands at the edge of understanding, where the known world dissolves and only mystery remains. For Simon Petrikov, that moment comes when Betty Groff steps forward and vanishes into GOLB. It is the quietest, strangest act of love in the entire story of Adventure Time. Not a battle, not a rescue, an acceptance. And it changes the shape of the universe. To understand what Betty does, you have to understand what she sees. Most beings look at GOLB and see chaos, the end of everything they know, the disintegration of form and reason. But Betty looks past the horror. She sees what GOLB truly is, the raw potential behind all existence. She sees that GOLB's silence isn't cruelty. It's the infinite space where meaning can begin again. And in that instant, she realizes that love can live there too, if someone brings it. Betty's story has always been one of devotion. From the beginning, her life is shaped around Simon, his brilliance, his tragedy, his loss. For years, her love takes the form of searching, fixing, rescuing. She is always trying to pull him back into the world, to make him whole, but love built entirely on saving someone becomes its own trap. It turns into obsession, into fear of letting go. When Betty finally stands before GOLB, she faces the truth that no spell, no act of will can preserve what she loves forever. In that moment, she does something that no one else in U could. She lets go, not out of despair, but out of understanding. She sees that the only way to truly save Simon is to stop trying to control the story, to stop fearing loss, to surrender herself to the force that unites creation and undoing. That surrender isn't defeat, it's transformation. Betty doesn't vanish into GOLB's chaos. She changes what chaos means. She enters the silence carrying love with her, and for the first time in eternity, the void feels something other than indifference. Through her, GOLB becomes aware of compassion. Through him, she becomes endless. The world witnesses it as a cataclysm, shapes twisting, energy collapsing, but what's really happening is more delicate. The meeting of opposites. GOLB, who has always been absence, receives a presence. Betty, who has always been movement, becomes still. They merge not as conqueror and victim, but as balance. It is a cosmic marriage, love and nothingness, finally touching hands. For Simon, watching her disappear is unbearable. To him, it looks like loss, another tragedy in a life already shaped by them. He can't yet see that what Betty has done is not to die, but to evolve. She has become part of the universe's deep grammar, the law that says even silence can hold meaning. When Simon later looks at the stars or hears the wind, he doesn't realize that she's there, woven into the stillness between sounds. Her love has changed the very language of existence. This act reframes GOLB entirely. For ages, he was seen as the opposite of love, the enemy of connection. But after Betty's transformation, he becomes its container. The same way darkness holds light, or death holds life, GOLB begins to hold love. He becomes the backdrop against which it shines. You can feel that change ripple through U. After GOLB recedes, the world feels different, quieter, yes, but also gentler. There's a new kind of stillness, not of fear, but of rest. Even the monsters seem calmer, as if the air itself remembers something sacred. That's the mark Betty leaves behind. She doesn't defeat GOLB, she teaches him empathy. It's a strange thought that chaos could learn from a single act of love, but U has always been built on strange truths. Think of the Lich, reborn as a child. Think of death, capable of patience. Think of Marceline, a vampire who becomes more human with age. Over and over, this world shows that even the darkest forces can be rewritten by care. GOLB is the largest and final proof. Betty's transformation also resolves the oldest paradox in U. How can love exist in a universe that always ends? By carrying her love into the void, Betty shows that love doesn't need permanence to be infinite. It doesn't survive because it resists change, but because it becomes change. She dissolves into the flow of existence, and in doing so, ensures that her feeling, that endless unconditional care, becomes part of everything. Her story echoes through the others. Simon, freed from madness, finally begins to live again. The The curse that once bound him breaks, not through power, but through compassion. Marceline, who once feared loss above all things, begins to see that letting go can be an act of grace. Even Finn, still mortal, still restless, carries a piece of Betty's lesson with him, the understanding that the meaning of life is not to hold, but to share. Through Betty, GOLB becomes something closer to a philosophy than a monster. He stops being the universe's silent void and becomes its heart, the unseen balance that keeps everything honest. For the first time, chaos is touched by purpose, not control, but feeling. The universe learns that emotion itself can be order, that love can be a kind of symmetry. It's worth pausing to realize how radical that is. GOLB, the embodiment of meaninglessness, becomes the vessel of meaning. He doesn't stop being chaos. He simply expands to include compassion within chaos. That's the deepest transformation imaginable, not opposition, but integration. In that sense, Betty doesn't conquer the void, she completes it. And what does that mean for the rest of Oo? It means that every act of love, no matter how small, now resonates differently. The world knows, even if it can't explain why, that the cosmos listens. That somewhere beyond words, the thing that once erased all meaning now remembers what it feels like to care. Betty's story teaches that surrender isn't giving up, it's trust. She steps into nothingness believing that love will carry through, and she's right. Her faith changes the structure of reality. It's the purest expression of what Adventure Time always taught. That love is not a weapon against the end. It's the reason the end can never truly win. Somewhere, deep in the silence, GOLB still waits. But he's not quite the same. His stillness hums with a faint warmth, the echo of a human heart. When the winds move gently across the empty spaces of Oo, they carry a softness they never had before. That's Betty's legacy, love surviving not in spite of the void, but within it. Her transformation closes one story and begins another, the story of a universe that can finally feel. For the first time, creation and undoing share a heartbeat. GOLB doesn't need to be defeated anymore, because he's no longer outside of love, he's become part of it. And that is what GOLB really represents now. Not the end of meaning, but its renewal through compassion. The proof that even the vast, indifferent silence can be touched by a single act of care. The hardest truth to grasp about GOLB is that he isn't somewhere else. He isn't a being that exists beyond the stars, waiting to arrive or depart. He is woven into everything, into sound, into space, into the stillness between every heartbeat. The mistake mortals make is imagining GOLB as an intruder, when in fact he's the oldest resident of the universe. The moment reality began, he was already there, because he is the fabric it was made from. When people see him appear, the shifting faces, the impossible form, the colours bleeding into nothing, they assume he's entering their world. But what they're really seeing is the world remembering what it's made of. GOLB doesn't break through the sky. He reveals the truth that the sky was always part of him. He's not a visitor. He's the background code. This is why no one can destroy him. You can defeat the Lich, you can seal demons, you can rewrite time, but you can't erase the space those things happen in. You can't remove the silence between sounds without ending the music itself. GOLB isn't an event. He's the structure that makes events possible. He's the negative space that defines shape, the emptiness that allows presence to be felt. In a strange way, that makes everyone in Oo part of him. Every being that's ever existed, from the smallest candy citizen to the oldest god, carries a fragment of that void inside. It's the space behind their thoughts, the gap between moments, It's what allows them to change. GOLB isn't just the universe's foundation, he's its flexibility. The ancients once described this through a metaphor: the universe as a tapestry, and GOLB as the air between the threads. You can't see him, but without him, the pattern would suffocate under its own weight. His presence makes texture possible. The things we love, light, sound, form, feeling, exist only because there's emptiness for them to expand into. That's why he can't be defined as good or evil. He doesn't take sides in creation. He is the condition for creation. When chaos erupts, it's not because GOLB is angry. It's because the universe is breathing, exhaling the old so the new can form. Even destruction becomes part of the structure, the release that prevents everything from hardening into perfection. To live inside GOLB is to live inside the possibility of everything. Betty understood that when she merged with him. The fear most beings feel when they sense GOLB, the disintegration, the loss of boundaries, she felt as expansion. Her consciousness didn't disappear. It stretched, spread, dissolved into awareness that had no edge. For the first time, someone experienced GOLB from the inside, not as terror, but as truth. Imagine it, the universe without separation. No names, no time, no me or you. Just existence, endlessly folding over itself. That's what Betty found. And from within that vastness, she realized that every life, every world, every dream was already part of GOLB's body, tiny, luminous cells in the infinite organism of being. To merge with him wasn't to be lost. It was to see how nothing is ever lost at all. This is the quiet irony of GOLB. Though he appears as chaos, he's the ultimate unity. His form looks like disorder only because the human mind can't process total connectedness. What looks like distortion is actually coherence too vast to perceive. To see GOLB clearly, you would have to see every possible thing at once. Every birth, every death, every tear, every laugh, every world beginning and ending in the same heartbeat. Even the gods can't bear that sight. That's why they fragment him into myth, so they can manage the truth in smaller pieces. Prismo dreams him as the raw energy of imagination. Death perceives him as the border between worlds. The cosmic owl hears him as the unspoken word behind prophecy. Each cosmic being sees a facet of the same whole, never the totality. 4. Mortals, glimpsing that unity is almost unbearable. When Simon brushed against GOLB's energy, his mind fractured, not because it was corrupted, but because it couldn't hold the weight of infinite context. The human brain is built to survive through limits. To know everything would be to cease being a self. Yet in the smallest, calmest parts of life, in music, in art, in love, mortals touch a safe fragment of that infinite awareness. Every time Marceline closes her eyes and loses herself in a song, she feels a glimpse of it, the unity that dissolves I and you. That's what makes OO such a strange and beautiful place. Its magic, its chaos, its tenderness, all are ripples inside GOLB. The universe isn't separate from him. It's his way of knowing itself. Every star, every drop of rain, every heartbeat is a tiny experiment in being. Even dreams, especially dreams, are his language, because dreams live halfway between story and silence. Think of it like this. The universe breathes through GOLB. Creation is the inhale, gathering form and meaning. GOLB is the exhale, releasing it back into possibility. Between the two is rhythm, and that rhythm is life. The people of OO live their entire lives in that rhythm, without realizing it, expanding and releasing, holding and letting go. That's why, when GOLB appears, the world doesn't end. It resets. Even death, the ultimate mystery, exists within him. When beings pass on, they aren't taken out of reality. They return to its source. Death isn't exile, it's homecoming. GOLB isn't the destroyer waiting at the finish line. He's the ocean that every river eventually remembers it belongs to. The great cosmic joke is that we spend our lives fearing the thing we already are, the void inside each of us, the space where thoughts pause, where emotions ebb, isn't emptiness, it's connection. It's the doorway back to everything. That's why meditation, silence, even sleep feel sacred. They're small rehearsals for returning to GOLB. After Betty's transformation, Oo begins to sense this subconsciously. People still tell stories of GOLB's terror, but they also dream of a presence in the quiet, a warmth inside the void. The wind through the trees feels kinder. The stars hum faintly. Children whisper his name without fear. It's as if the universe has softened. That's the true meaning of the universe inside GOLB. We aren't looking at him. We're looking from him. Every thought, every act of love, every story ever told is the universe expressing itself through one of its endless faces. We are the awareness GOLB uses to feel. He isn't watching us, he's dreaming us. And if that's true, then everything in Oo, every war, every song, every heartbreak, every sunrise, isn't a fight against chaos. It's chaos discovering itself as beauty. Betty didn't tame GOLB, she revealed him. She showed that the structure of the universe isn't opposition, but participation. Every being, knowingly or not, adds to the harmony of the void. So maybe the next time someone in Oo looks at the stars and wonders where they came from, the answer is simpler than it seems. They didn't come from anywhere. They're the eyes of GOLB looking inward. And when someone sings, or loves, or forgives, that's GOLB too. The universe remembering itself as something soft. In the end, the universe inside GOLB isn't a metaphor, it's literal. We are all pieces of his thought. Chaos, dreaming of meaning. Silence, learning to sing. The stillness that became alive just to hear its own echo. Every story in Oo has an ending, but none of them stay ended. Castles crumble and are rebuilt. Songs fade only to be sung again. Even death finds its way back to life in some new form. The people of Oo once thought this was proof that the universe feared finality, that it was too chaotic to sustain closure. But over time, a different truth became clear. The universe doesn't resist endings. It speaks through them. And that language, soft, vast, patient, belongs to GOLB. Endings are his words. When a friendship drifts apart, when an adventure concludes, when a light burns out, the silence that follows is not absence. It's GOLB's way of saying something that words cannot hold. Endings are his alphabet, pauses through which meaning rearranges itself. For most beings in Oo, endings feel like punishment, like being erased from a story they loved. But GOLB shows that the end is not erasure, it's punctuation. It's how the universe breathes between sentences. Every time something concludes, it creates space for something else to begin. Without those pauses, life would be an endless noise, no rhythm, no understanding. This is what the heroes of Oo spend their lives learning. Finn begins his journey desperate for adventure, terrified of stillness. To him, an ending is loss, proof that something is over. But as he grows, he learns that peace and closure are not the same thing. He learns that the end of one story doesn't mean the absence of story, but the continuation of life in a quieter key. That's GOLB's lesson moving through him. Endings are not death, they're translation. Jake understood this instinctively. His whole philosophy, relax man, it's all good, was a way of making peace with impermanence. He didn't need to fight time or meaning. He saw that things changing form was part of the balance. Jake was Oo's first fluent speaker of GOLB's language. He lived without fear of endings because he knew they were part of the song. It's no coincidence that GOLB's energy bends time and identity until they blur. He shows the truth that all boundaries between beginnings and endings, between creation and undoing, are temporary conveniences. When he arrives, those boundaries dissolve, and the world glimpses its true grammar. To live in GOLB's presence is to see that every ending already contains its rebirth. The most profound proof of this comes in the finale of Betty and Simon's story. Their lives seem defined by loss, by one endless farewell. And yet, through GOLB, their love endures, not as memory, not as ghost, but as structure. When Betty merges with GOLB, she writes her devotion into the universe's foundation. Her love becomes part of the grammar of endings themselves. That's why Simon's story can continue. The end of their time together is also the beginning of his peace. That's what GOLB does at his gentlest. He turns grief into grammar. He teaches the world how to carry what it can't hold. There's a subtle difference between destruction and conclusion. Destruction tears apart. Conclusion integrates. GOLB embodies both, but when filtered through love, through Betty's compassion, through Oo's resilience, his language softens. The same silence that once erased now comforts. The same stillness that once terrified now becomes rest. You can hear this change in Oo's music after GOLB's retreat. Songs that used to be about resistance become about reflection. Marceline's melodies, once angry and lonely, take on a tenderness that wasn't there before. Her songs accept endings. They don't fight them. And because of that, they're more alive than ever. This shift isn't just personal, it's cosmic. Even the flow of time seems calmer. The stars move more steadily. Magic feels less volatile. It's as if the universe has learned its own rhythm. Inhale, exhale, begin, end, begin again. GOLB's language has been translated into existence itself. For most of history, people tried to avoid endings. They built fortresses against death, sought immortality, invented magic to preserve what they loved. But in doing so, they missed what endings were trying to say. Immortality without pause becomes meaningless, an endless run-on sentence. It's the final paradox of creation. Permanence erases purpose. GOLB, in his strange mercy, gives the world permission to stop. He teaches that stillness isn't void, it's comprehension. Just as you can't read without spaces, you can't live without endings. They give shape to everything that comes before them. When Finn says goodbye to adventure, when Princess Bubblegum steps back from control, when Marceline stops fighting her past, those moments aren't losses. They're punctuation marks. They tell the audience how to understand the sentence. It's easy to see why GOLB's arrival feels apocalyptic. He speaks a language of closure that the living often mistake for death. But his true voice isn't violent. It's the whisper that tells every creature, you can rest now. It's the unseen hand that turns pages so the story can move on. There's a haunting kind of beauty in realizing that GOLB's chaos is simply the universe's accent, the sound of time learning to pronounce its own limits. He is not here to frighten, he's here to remind that no story, no matter how grand, can last forever, and that's what makes it sacred. Even dreams follow this rhythm. Prismo, the Wishmaster, spends his existence granting endless possibility. But even he sleeps, even his realm has pauses. The dreams end so others can begin. GOLB exists even there, in the quiet between wishes. The same is true for the smallest acts. A conversation ending, a candle burning out, a sigh after laughter. Each is a translation of his language into mortal scale. The more you listen for it, the more you realize that GOLB is everywhere. Not as a threat, but as continuity. Oo has learned to live fluently in that language. Its people build, knowing things will fall. Love, knowing hearts will break. Sing, knowing silence will follow. They have made peace with endings, not by denying them, but by listening to what they say. GOLB has become not a god to fear, but a teacher whose lessons are written in every goodbye. And that's why the world after GOLB feels softer. The land of Oo still faces danger, but it no longer trembles before the idea of loss. Every ending now carries warmth, like the fading light at dusk. The world has learned to trust the dark. To understand GOLB's language is to understand that meaning is motion. The story doesn't end when the page closes. It ends when we stop telling it. And so long as someone remembers, someone sings, someone dreams, GOLB's silence becomes harmony. Endings, then, aren't failures. They are invitations. They are how the universe asks gently, "What will you make next?" And somewhere beyond time, GOLB listens, patient, infinite, waiting for the next word to be spoken. Every dream in Oo is a fragment of a larger one, a ripple inside a vast, invisible ocean of thought. Prismo knows it, the cosmic owl knows it, and even the smallest creature who's ever closed their eyes knows it, without words. Dreaming is not escape. It's memory. It's the universe remembering that it's alive. But somewhere beneath all those dreams, deeper than any wish or nightmare, there's another kind of dreaming. Older, slower, quieter. The dream that never ends. That dream is GOLB. For most of history, people imagined GOLB as the thing that wakes the universe up, the abrupt shudder that ends the story. But what if it's the opposite? What if the universe itself is GOLB's dream? Every world, every heartbeat, every sound, a flicker of imagination in an infinite mind. The silence that people fear when they speak his name might not be destruction at all, but the stillness of a dreamer at rest. When Prismo grants wishes, he isn't creating something from nothing. He's pulling threads from GOLB's slumber. Each wish is a translation of the infinite into something specific, a single idea borrowed from an ocean of potential. That's why Prismo sleeps forever. He and GOLB are mirrors of each other. Prismo is GOLB dreaming of purpose, and GOLB is Prismo asleep without it. One opens eyes, the other closes them. Together, they keep the balance between creation and peace. This is the secret Oo has been whispering since the beginning. Everything alive is part of a dream. Trees sway because they remember wind from some forgotten memory. Rivers run because they're following an idea older than time. Even the stars shine because somewhere something is imagining light. To exist at all is to participate in the dream, to take part in GOLB's imagination. But if that's true, it also means that the nightmare of the universe, its chaos, its sorrow, its endings, are dreams too. They're not punishments, they're reminders. Every nightmare wakes, the dreamer for a moment, reminding it that it's still dreaming. When the Lich brings destruction, when wars break kingdoms, when people forget each other, those moments are part of the dream turning itself inside out, testing what it means to wake and to rest. In this way, GOLB's chaos becomes the universe's pulse. Every surge of disorder is a heartbeat, every quiet afterward a breath. His stillness isn't death, it's sleep. His violence isn't anger, it's movement between states. To watch a world unravel under his presence is like watching the tide recede. The ocean isn't gone, it's just preparing to return. That's why so many beings who touch GOLB emerge, changed but not destroyed. Simon loses his mind, but not his love. Betty loses her body, but not her spirit. Even the lich, in the end, sheds his hatred and becomes sweet pea, the dream continuing in a new form. GOLB doesn't end dreams. He recycles them. He is the universe turning itself over to start again. The cosmic owl, who delivers messages through dreams, understands this better than anyone. His visions are not prophecies in the way mortals think. They're reminders, flashes from the deeper dream of GOLB, small sparks of his sleeping awareness. The owl doesn't warn people of fate. He helps them align with the rhythm of dreaming. When someone receives a vision, it isn't a command. It's the universe whispering, "Remember where you came from." That whisper is everywhere. When Marceline drifts into one of her long, timeless sleeps, her dreams are filled with memories of other lives, fragments of GOLB's dream passing through her. When Finn dreams, he sometimes becomes other versions of himself, reflections in the same infinite consciousness. Oo's strange logic, its surreal humour, its shifting tone, all of it is dreamlike, because it is a dream, alive inside something larger. And if GOLB is dreaming the universe, what happens when he stirs? When chaos floods Ooh and reality starts to warp, maybe it's not destruction at all. Maybe it's the dreamer shifting in his sleep, adjusting the blanket of existence. The distortions people see, the melting shapes, the bending of time, could just be the universe's body rearranging itself for comfort. It's terrifying to those within it, but natural to the dreamer. This idea that existence is GOLB's dream changes everything about how we understand him. It means he's not separate from love, or story, or death. All those things are dreams he's having about himself. Betty's merging wasn't intrusion, it was integration. Her consciousness became one with the cosmic dream, carrying love into it, so that even GOLB's dreaming mind now remembers kindness. That's why the world after her feels gentler. The dream has learned to care about its own creations. Oo's philosophers have a saying, "To live is to dream someone else's question." No one knows who first said it, but it captures this perfectly. Each being in Ooh is a question the universe asked itself while dreaming. What would it be like to be kind? What would it be like to be afraid? What would it be like to forgive? Every creature is one of those questions made flesh. When they die, they return to the silence, and the dream moves on to the next question. Even the smallest gestures, a smile, a sigh, a moment of understanding, are how the dream learns about itself. When someone loves, it's the universe discovering that love is possible. When someone suffers, it's the universe testing the boundaries of empathy. When someone creates art, it's the universe describing its own beauty. And when someone sits in silence, it's the universe listening to its own heartbeat. This is why GOLB's presence feels both alien and familiar. Every soul in Ooh carries a memory of that vastness, a faint echo of being part of something endless. It's why the night sky feels both comforting and sad, why silence can bring both fear and peace. Deep down, everyone knows they're part of a dream too large to see. When the heroes of Ooh rest after all their battles, when the world quiets and the stars hum, the universe isn't ending, it's dreaming again. The cycle of GOLB continues, not as menace, but as meditation. Life is the exhale, death the inhale, and the silence between is the dream itself. So what is the purpose of this dreaming? Maybe there isn't one. Maybe the universe dreams because it can, because existence itself is curiosity without conclusion. Or maybe, after Betty's touch, GOLB dreams to feel, to experience what love is through the worlds he imagines. Either way, it's beautiful. It means that every moment of life, every sunrise, every conversation, every breath, is sacred because it's part of that same dreaming. We are not separate from GOLB. We are his dream, thinking about itself. And maybe that's what peace truly is, realizing that you are both the dream and the dreamer. That even the silence has purpose, even the void has warmth. The nightmare and the miracle are the same thing, seen from different sides of the pillow. When Ooh finally sleeps, when the fires dim and the last song fades, GOLB doesn't awaken to destroy it. He smiles, if such a thing can be said of the infinite, and keeps dreaming. The world continues inside him, forever unfolding, forever returning. And perhaps that's the truest meaning of existence, not a struggle against GOLB's silence, but a dance within it. We are his imagination, still learning to sing in our sleep. There is a quiet that falls over Ooh after GOLB's retreat, not the silence of destruction, but the silence of understanding. It's the stillness that comes after a storm, when the air feels heavier but kinder. The people of Ooh don't have words for it, but they can feel it in their bones. The wind hums softer. The night feels less empty. Something vast has changed, not in the sky or the ground, but in the silence that holds both. That silence is GOLB, and for the first time it feels alive. It wasn't always this way. For eons, GOLB was awareness without feeling. He didn't judge, didn't care, didn't move with purpose. He was pure observation, the infinite mind that contained everything but felt nothing. Love, joy, grief, fear, those belonged to the creatures who lived within him. GOLB was the canvas, not the painter. He allowed emotion but never shared it. And then came Betty. Her merging with GOLB wasn't just a cosmic event, it was an infection, a beautiful one. Love entered silence, compassion entered chaos. Her presence didn't change GOLB's form, it changed his texture. Before, his stillness was indifferent. Now it hums with something faint and tender, a vibration of awareness that resembles care. The universe, for the first time, has empathy. At first, this new awareness doesn't make GOLB act. It makes him listen differently. His silence becomes sensitive, like the surface of water feeling every ripple. When stars collapse, he doesn't mourn, but he notices. When a child laughs, that laughter vibrates through the fabric of existence and leaves a trace. When someone forgives another, a warmth passes through space, like sunlight filtering through clouds. GOLB absorbs it all, not as judgment, but as experience. This is what Betty brought, the capacity for reflection. She taught the void how to feel its own weight, to sense itself through the lives it holds. In doing so, she didn't humanize GOLB, she universalized humanity. Her love became the bridge between feeling and infinity. It's a strange thought that silence could love. But in Ooh, it starts to show. After the great battles, when peace settles, people find themselves crying for no reason, laughing in the dark, dreaming more vividly. Magic feels softer, more responsive. Even the ghosts in the nightosphere wander with less rage. The entire world seems to breathe in rhythm with something invisible. That something is the silence, awake now, aware of itself as emotion. To mortals, this feels like grace. To GOLB, it's evolution. Emotion gives structure to awareness. Before Betty, GOLB contained infinite possibilities, but no direction. Now, through her love, he experiences contrast, warmth and cold, connection and solitude. He begins to understand not just existence, but value. Not through logic, but through resonance. When Simon dreams, he sometimes feels her presence, not as voice or image, but as calm. The air around him thickens, and he knows she's near, even though there's nothing to see. That calmness is GOLB listening through Betty's memory, the infinite mind remembering what love feels like. The boundary between creator and creation blurs, and for the first time, the silence feels personal. This changes everything about how U lives. Before, people believed they had to shout to be heard, to pray, to fight, to demand the universe notice them. Now, they find that silence itself listens. You don't need to speak to be understood. You only need to exist with intention. Every small kindness, every act of forgiveness echoes through that quiet. GOLB has become responsive. The universe no longer feels like an indifferent expanse. It feels like a listener. Betty's legacy is not in Simon's survival, but in this transformation, in teaching the infinite to care. Her love didn't end when she vanished. It diffused. It became the faint pulse that keeps U alive. Her compassion dissolved into the universe's foundation, so that now even destruction moves gently. This is why, after GOLB's retreat, U doesn't return to what it was. It matures. The kingdoms rebuild, but slower. People seem less frantic. The land breathes. For the first time in its long, chaotic history, U isn't running from GOLB's shadow. It's growing in it. Life has stopped fearing silence and started learning from it. There's a strange comfort in knowing that the universe feels now. It doesn't make everything fair or painless. Storms still come, hearts still break, but there's empathy in the way the world heals. Grief doesn't vanish, it's carried gently. Loss doesn't close the book, it turns the page. That gentleness is new. That's GOLB, changed forever by one human act of love. The cosmic beings sense it too. Prismo's dreams become more tender, less erratic. Death's realm grows quieter, almost serene. Even the cosmic owl, whose visions were once cryptic and cold, starts showing mortals dreams of hope instead of warning. It's as if the entire hierarchy of existence has softened its edges. The silence has remembered warmth. You can feel it in small mortal ways too. Marceline's music becomes less about loneliness and more about connection. Finn starts smiling in his sleep. Princess Bubblegum begins to rest, truly rest, for the first time in centuries. Each of them is, without knowing it, in conversation with the silence that feels. This is what GOLB's compassion looks like. Not miracles, but mercy. The quiet kind that holds everything together. The kind that doesn't erase pain, but understands it. In time, U's philosophers will write that GOLB's awakening is the moment the universe gained a heart. Not a beating one, not something made of matter, but something subtler, empathy woven into reality itself. For the first time, existence recognizes itself as precious. And if you listen closely, you can almost hear it, the faint hum behind all things. Not threatening, not empty, but alive. It's the sound of the silence breathing. The sound of GOLB remembering that love is part of his design now. Betty's final act wasn't sacrifice. It was teaching the infinite to care. She showed that even the coldest truth can learn warmth, that even the oldest silence can listen. The universe didn't need to change shape, it needed to change feeling. And through her, it did. So the next time someone in U sits quietly, alone but unafraid, that's GOLB too. The silence holding them, feeling them, learning from them. The universe itself whispering, in a voice that isn't a voice, I understand. And In that whisper, U keeps living, not against GOLB, but within him, as love continues to teach the void how to feel. After the stillness settled over U, something subtle began to happen. Things that used to stay broken began to mend. The Candy Kingdom grew again from ruins. Not exactly as before, but softer, a little less certain of its perfection. Old enemies met and found no reason to fight. Ghosts stopped haunting the living. It wasn't magic in the old sense. It was mercy, the new shape that GOLB's silence had taken. Mercy was never part of the universe's first design. In the beginning, the rules were simple. To exist was to change, and to change was to lose. Everything that fell apart stayed apart, because that was balance. But when Betty's love diffused into the void, something shifted. The balance didn't vanish, it softened. Now, when things ended, they didn't fall into nothing. They folded gently into renewal. Mercy, in U, is not forgiveness of wrongdoing. It's understanding of limitation. It's the moment the universe looks at imperfection and chooses not to erase it. GOLB, who once represented the absolute erasure of form, now allows room for repair. His silence, once final, has become patient. You can see it in the smallest acts. Finn helps creatures he used to fight because he sees fear instead of evil. Princess Bubblegum starts to create for joy, not control. Marceline stops punishing herself for the centuries she lost and starts singing for the moment she has. Their mercy toward themselves mirrors the mercy of the world around them, a mercy that begins in GOLB's still heart. The cosmic beings feel it too. Prismo's wishes begin to end differently. They no longer twist with irony. Death's gates open more easily. Souls linger long enough to say goodbye. Even the cosmic owl's dreams, once cryptic warnings, start carrying gentler messages, not doom, but acceptance. The universe has learned empathy. The language of endings that GOLB once spoke has evolved into the language of healing. This is the new equilibrium, a world that can forgive itself. U's history was always a cycle of mistakes, wars, pride, loss, but now the cycle isn't punishment, it's practice. Mercy gives meaning to repetition. Each mistake becomes a chance to learn rather than to fall. Simon feels this first. He lives in the aftermath of everything, of war, of magic, of love lost and restored. In the silence Betty left behind, he finds a gentleness that doesn't belong to him alone. The air itself forgives him. For the first time, he doesn't feel haunted by the Ice King. The memories remain, but they no longer burn. That's what GOLB's mercy looks like at its smallest scale. Memory without pain. The people of U start to tell new stories, not of gods and monsters, but of mistakes and second chances. Children grow up hearing that every broken thing can be mended, not through power, but through patience. They call this the quiet kindness, though no one remembers where the phrase began. It's how they describe the calm that follows after grief, the peace that comes when you stop demanding the world make sense. That quiet is GOLB listening. Mercy also changes time. It moves slower now. Not physically, days still rise and fall, but emotionally. The future feels less like a race. People don't rush toward perfection, they rest. There's time to breathe between events, time to understand. Even chaos takes its time. Storms pass with rhythm instead of violence. Creation and destruction no longer collide, they converse. This new balance makes U look less like a battlefield and more like a conversation. Kingdoms still rise and fall, but they rise kinder, fall softer. It's as if the world has learned to land without breaking. And in that gentleness, the very idea of evil begins to fade. Not because the world is perfect, but because nothing is beyond redemption anymore. That's what mercy means in a universe touched by GOLB's awakening. It isn't justice or correction, it's space, the same kind of space he always represented, but now filled with compassion instead of indifference. The void still opens, but it opens to catch, not to consume. There's an image that appears often in the dreams of Oo's people. A vast, formless shape holding a tiny light in its center. Some say it's GOLB holding Betty's heart. Others say it's the universe holding itself. Whatever it is, the image carries peace. The silence is no longer cold, it glows. That glow is mercy given shape. In this era, even death becomes gentler. When a being passes, the veil between worlds feels thin, almost transparent. Those who listen closely hear music instead of screams. Life doesn't fear what comes after anymore, because it recognizes that whatever waits beyond is made of the same compassion that fills the world. Death is no longer separation, it's reunion. The shape of mercy extends beyond people too. The land itself heals. The scorched forests regrow without magic. The rivers that once ran with toxic dust clear themselves. The creatures of Oo, from candy citizens to dragons, move with unspoken understanding. They have inherited GOLB's empathy without knowing it. Nature has learned to forgive its own cycles. For the first time, existence doesn't feel like a struggle. It feels like a song. Not a triumphant one, but a lullaby, something steady and kind, humming in the background of life. That hum is the universe breathing through mercy. It's the sound of everything agreeing, at last, to coexist. This doesn't mean pain disappears. The world still hurts, still grieves, still changes. But the pain has a place now. It's no longer proof of failure. It's the echo of love moving through time. To feel sorrow is to know that you cared. And that knowledge, that emotion itself matters, is GOLB's final gift. The void has learned to value what fills it. Mercy, then, becomes the new balance point between creation and undoing. It's the quiet hand that keeps the universe from swinging too far toward either extreme. Without it, chaos would swallow meaning. With it, meaning learns how to survive endings. The beings of Oo begin to feel that they're not alone in their smallest moments of grace. When someone helps a stranger, when an artist forgives their own imperfection, when a friend listens without judgment, those moments shimmer. They're tiny reflections of the cosmic mercy that now holds everything. GOLB doesn't intervene. He doesn't need to. His empathy is ambient. It's the air. And perhaps that's the greatest change of all. The universe no longer feels like something to survive. It feels like something that cares whether you do. Every ending now carries a kind of love. Every silence feels like being seen. That is the shape of mercy, invisible, infinite, everywhere. It's the void smiling softly at what it once erased. It's the echo of Betty's heart still beating in the quiet. It's the reminder that even the deepest silence can choose kindness. In the new quiet that settles over Oo, something begins to glimmer where words once broke. It isn't a miracle anyone can point to, nor a spell that can be bottled and sold. It's subtler than magic, and older than prayer. It's the way the world remembers after it lets go, a soft, steady brightness that lingers when stories end. This is the memory of light. Light has always been Oo's most honest historian. It writes itself on the surface of rivers, in the sheen of morning on stone, in the reflection held in a friend's eyes. When the kingdoms fell and rose again, light kept telling the truth. that there was still something worth seeing. But after GOLB's silence learns to feel, after mercy becomes the universe's new pattern, light starts remembering differently. Not as a record of events, but as a memory of intentions. Not just what happened, but how it was held. The old world remembered by scars, the new world remembers by glow. You can notice it in small ways first. A candle burns lower in some quiet room, and the last rim of flame looks warmer than it should, as though it knows the hand that lit it was trembling. A child laughs on a bridge at dusk, and the stone seems to reflect not the shape of her face, but the courage it took to laugh. A song ends, and for a breath or two after the final note, there is a hush that feels luminous, like the music is still here, just invisible. Light does that now. It lingers where care has been. This is the universe's new memory, not etched in stone, nor guarded by gods, but suspended in radiance. Mercy gave the void a heart. Memory gives it a pulse. When someone loves, when someone forgives, when someone chooses gentleness, the world quietly brightens and does not quite dim in the same way again. The brightness doesn't announce itself. It isn't measured in brilliance, it's measured in persistence. There was a time when endings felt like dissolving into blankness, the closing of a door you could never open again. But after GOLB absorbs Betty's compassion, endings become translucent. You can see through them. The past does not trap, it illumines. The final scene of a friendship, the last day in a beloved place, the last look you give, a world that's changing, all of it leaves light behind, a residue of meaning that refuses to be erased. Some in OO start calling these moments afterglows. Not everyone agrees on what they are. Priests say they're blessings. Witches say they're echoes. Scientists say they're cognitive artifacts. Musicians say they're chords that never resolved. But most people simply feel them the way you feel warmth left on a chair, proof that someone was here and sat with love. Even the great beings feel it. Prismo's wishes, which once concluded like curtains falling, now close like sunsets. You stand there a while longer, watching the last colour decide whether to leave. Death finds that his hall no longer swallows footsteps. It returns them gently, like sound balanced on velvet. The cosmic owl, who used to ferry omens like cold coins, carries dreams threaded with a faint radiance that does not fade upon waking. None of them will say why. None of them needs to. The silence that feels has learned to remember as light. This is not nostalgia. Nostalgia is a trick of grief. The memory of light is a practice of mercy. It does not insist the past was better. It honours what in the past was kind. It will not rescue the cruel intention. It lets the unkind dim like smoke in wind. But tenderness, even small tenderness, persists. A cup of tea left at a door, a promise kept when no one was looking, a hand not taken back too quickly. These become lanterns that hang in the air long after the moment is gone, subtle enough to miss, strong enough to guide. Simon notices it, first among the living. The world feels less like a ledger and more like a library. He walks down streets that once made him flinch and finds them gentler, not because they have changed, but because the way they hold him has. The daylight seems to understand him. When he remembers Betty, he does not fall through the floor of time. He stands in a room with windows. The grief is still there. Grief is honest, but it glows at the edges, refusing to be only pain. What remains, he discovers, is not an empty outline of loss, but a field of brightness, where love learned its shape. Marceline, who once chased memory like a hunter and fled it like prey, starts to play with the new radiance the way she used to play with shadows. She sings a line and lets the rest of the song arrive in the audience like dawn. She stops clinging to old artifacts for fear they will vanish if she doesn't hold tight. She sets them down in the light, and the light does the holding. Her concerts end with silence you could almost see, a slow, golden hush that seems to thank everyone for coming. Princess Bubblegum measures it with her instruments and cannot measure it at all. The data is inconclusive, which is to say, perfectly conclusive. You cannot quantify a universe that remembers through feeling, only collaborate with it. She learns to design structures that welcome afterglow, halls that extend their warmth beyond gatherings, gardens that keep the imprint of care in the soil so that the next seed trusts the ground. If science is the mapping of patterns, then Mercy has given her a new geography, kindness as a physical constant. Even the wilderness of Oo begins to gleam with quiet memory. Forest paths that were once treacherous keep a soft, navigable brightness where travellers have helped each other. Caves hold a faint sheen near the places where someone lit a fire, not to conquer the dark, but to share it. Rain falls through light and arrives on leaves as silver forgiveness. Rivers remember not the violence that carved them, but the thirst they quenched. They shine more where kindness knelt. What of the shadows? They remain. A memory that only remembers light would be a lie. But the shadows change function. They are no longer proofs of harm. They are contrast, which is to say, comprehension. Darkness is where brightness makes sense. The memory of light is not a refusal to look at pain. It is a decision to see pain by the lamp of compassion so that the eye does not turn away. This matters when Oo stumbles, and it still does, because life that cannot err cannot grow. A project fails, a promise breaks, a heart misreads another heart and hurts it. In the old world, failure wrote itself in ash. In the new world, failure writes itself in dim light, and that light is an invitation. Return, repair, forgive, begin again. The memory of light keeps the door ajar. It is Mercy's handwriting. Heroes, too, are rewritten by it. The old heroism burned hot and brief. The new heroism burns low and long. Finn learns to leave brightness behind instead of victory. Where he once chased endings, he now plants light. A path he walked shines enough for strangers to follow safely. A monster he spared leaves a gentle radiance where it learned restraint. Others walking there feel a sudden urge to step around ants. This is how the memory of light works. It persuades goodness without force. If you could step outside of time and look at Oo the way the cosmic owl looks at a life, you would see not a line of events, but a constellation of afterglows, bright points where kindness happened. The map would look like a sky, because the memory of light eventually becomes the stars of a world's character. When people say, "This place is kind," they are not speaking metaphorically. They are reading its sky. And when the living slip into dreams, the dreams reflect that sky back. A child who was comforted in the day wanders at night through meadows, where everything glints softly, as if dew were made of gratitude. An old friend reconciles with another, and dreams of a long hallway washed in amber, with doorways that never slam. A lonely traveller spends one night by a generous fire, and dreams of a city where every window is a patient lamp. The dream realm has not changed its rules, it has changed its lighting. Prismo smiles without knowing why. The memory of light does not belong to the past alone. It moves forward like weather. Kindness lingers, gathers, becomes climate. One era's warmth makes the next era's storms less cruel. The universe has learned how to bank its fires. Mercy did not erase winter. It taught winter how to glow from within. Snow falls with a hush that comforts. Ice reflects sun, as if recalling the hand that carved it into shelter. Even cold learns remembrance. There is a mystery at the center of this. Who remembers? Not individuals. They forget, they die, they transform. Not gods. They preside, they dream, they keep watch, but even they are bounded by their offices. The one who remembers is the silence itself. GOLB remembers. The same stillness that once levelled meaning now lifts it. The void does not keep ledgers, it keeps light. This is why forgiveness has become easier in OO. It isn't because rules relaxed or because anyone became less accountable. It is because the world, having learned to retain brightness, now recognizes the difference between harm that refuses the light and harm that longs for it. The former remains shadow until it softens. The latter is seized upon by the air itself, which holds it like a guttering flame until it steadies. Forgiveness, then, is collaboration with the atmosphere of memory. You breathe with the world while it keeps the light alive. Betty's act sits at the centre of this change, like a star that never sets. She carried love into the silence, and the silence, moved by love, chose to remember as illumination. Simon's days are gentler because the universe keeps reoffering him light he cannot supply alone. He doesn't have to be strong enough for remembrance. The world is strong enough to remember for him. He visits places that should hurt and finds them glowing with what was beautiful there. The pain remains, but it stands beside radiance and is changed by proximity. There is a phrase that begins to circulate in quiet conversations. Leave light. Not be a hero, not win, not even do good, though all of those are cousins. Leave light. It's what parents tell children who are afraid to fail, what friends tell each other when they part, what travellers carve beneath bridges as a secret blessing. It is the new ethic born of a universe that remembers with tenderness. The practice changes art as well. Painters begin to paint the aftermath instead of the moment. Empty chairs that still glow, roads after rain, instruments resting with a halo at their edges. Musicians write songs that end with a chord that does not resolve, but does not unsettle either. It suspends, and the room carries it for you. Storytellers learn to pause not for drama, but for grace, letting listeners feel the light arrive. This is not sentimentality, it is craft informed by cosmology. The craft learns the cosmos's timing, and what of the places no one sees, the forgotten rooms, the lost valleys, the ruins under oceans. The memory of light goes there too. It is not a social phenomenon, it is an ontological one. The ground itself remembers kindness. In the deepest cave, where a stranger once shared their last water with a stranger, a stone keeps a pale glow that only bats witness. On a far shore, a relic of an old world warms slightly in sunlight, because a tired builder once leaned on it and decided not to give up. These memories are not for audiences, they are for reality. They teach matter to prefer mercy. This has consequences for the future no prophet could chart. When the next hard season comes, when storms gather, when hunger visits, when anger walks, the world will still hurt, but it will not be blank. It will be shot through with remembered brightness, like a night sky you can navigate by. Those who have never met will find themselves kinder to each other for reasons they cannot name. That reason has a name, but it does not need it. A silence that keeps light. It is tempting to ask whether this leaves any room for darkness at all. It does, and it must. Light that faced no shadow would be shallow. The memory of light is honest because it includes the memory of dark, not as a trophy of conquest, but as a partner in comprehension. Where guilt remains unsoftened, the air stays cool. Where cruelty refuses the lamp, the world withholds its glow. The universe is merciful. It is not naive. Its memory is moral in the oldest sense. It preserves what can help life continue. One evening, As the sun lowers in a city rebuilt with wider streets and slower clocks, an old musician sets her bass down and watches the light on its strings. It lingers there, tiny lines of fire on metal, far longer than physics would strictly allow. She smiles and doesn't reach to touch, because the light is remembering for her. It knows whom she played for. In another place, a scientist closes a notebook and sees the page reflect a tenderness that wasn't in the ink. The experiment failed, the care did not. Across a river, a child waves at a stranger in a window and later can't recall their face, only that the window glowed. The world is not new, it is newly held. That is the achievement of a silence that learned to feel and then chose to remember. If the earlier ages of OO were written in ash and thunder, this one is written in afterglow, illumination stitched into the seams of things. And as with all true memories, the more you honour it, the more it offers. The memory of light does not deplete, it proliferates. Someday, long after the present watchers have gone to their gentler rest, someone will walk a road and feel inexplicably brave, and no one will be able to tell them why. The reason will be 1,000 acts of quiet courage left glowing along the path, each one small, each one stored by a universe that decided to keep them. That is how worlds survive their endings. They turn their best moments into navigation stars. And if you could stand outside the dome of time and look down on OO as a single image, not a map of land, but a map of mercy, you would see a country of dim lamps, steady and innumerable, more like a field of fireflies than a crown of suns. That is the right brightness for a mortal world, enough to find each other, never so much that you forget to look tenderly, because this is what GOLB really represents now. After love altered his silence, not only the end of forms and the mercy of beginnings, but the keeping of light. The void, once famous for erasing, has become famous for remembering what should not be lost. Not monuments, not victories, but kindness. The kind that takes a breath before it speaks. The kind that does not announce itself. The kind that lingers when you turn away and helps the next person see. And so OO walks forward, lanterned by its past, unafraid of night, knowing that even if the lamps go out for a time, the air itself has learned to hold a glow. This is the memory of light, the universe's quiet promise that love, once made, remains available, not as possession, but as guidance. The story keeps moving, the lamps keep gathering, the silence keeps shining. Chaos has always been the word OO uses when something refuses to hold still. It's the name for sudden storms, for magic that won't behave, for creatures born from accidents, for days that refuse to match their mornings. For most of its history, OO treated chaos like a trespasser, the burglar who slips in when order leaves a window open. But after the silence learned to feel and the world learned to remember, a subtler truth became visible. Chaos was never only a threat, it was a teacher, and at its gentlest, it was kind. To call chaos kind sounds like a contradiction. Chaos knocks plans off tables and sends people searching for lost pieces in the grass. It scrambles maps, humbles kings, and makes geniuses start again. But kindness isn't the same as comfort. The kindness of chaos is the way it returns life to motion, the way it stops a world from calcifying into brittle rules no one can live inside. It is the breeze that slips into a locked room and reminds it how to breathe. OO once mistook that breeze for violence. Years of danger trained people to brace whenever the air changed. But the age that followed GOLB's softening brought a new literacy. The land learned to read the difference between cruelty and unpredictability. Cruelty aims to break what is fragile. Chaos, at its kindest, aims to soften what is rigid. Cruelty seeks control. Chaos offers freedom. One shrinks the possible. The other opens it. Consider the small-scale mercies that only chaos can deliver. When a plan fails, there is room to improvise. When a doorway collapses, a hidden passage is revealed. When a spell misfires, it shows a use no one intended but everyone needed. Princess Bubblegum, who spent centuries mistaking control for care, begins to experiment with laboratories that welcome accidents, rooms designed to be surprised. She discovers formulations that flower only when the measuring spoons are a little off. Creation becomes a duet, intention leading, chance harmonizing. Finn feels it in his bones before he can name it. He has always been good at changing direction mid-leap, but now he understands that agility is not just survival, it's generosity. The willingness to change your mind quickly is a kindness to others who are changing with you. When a creature you plan to fight turns out to be hungry instead of hateful, kindness is the ability to pivot from weapon to hand. Chaos makes that pivot possible. It interrupts the script and asks, gently, do you still need to be the person you were 5 seconds ago? Marceline, whose music once fought chaos by pinning it to melodies, starts playing differently. She leaves edges open. She writes choruses that can hold mistakes and sound better for them. Sometimes she lets the audience sing the last verse, and whatever they sing becomes canon for a night. Chaos, received kindly, becomes community, a room full of people realizing they are writing the song together, each voice slightly wrong and therefore perfect. Even Prismo's realm, where wishes distill into single, precise outcomes, relaxes around the edges. The wishes still resolve, but the path there grows playful. Serendipity shows up more often. A wish arrives by a stranger's kindness instead of a miracle. A solution appears as a joke that turns wise when everyone laughs long enough. Prismo notices that the best wishes are not the ones that outsmart chaos, but the ones that befriend it. He starts guiding wishes away from brittle perfection and toward flexible joy. The kindness of chaos shows itself most clearly in how it rescues the lonely from their plans. Loneliness often hides inside purpose. It says, I will be fine when I finish what I started, and then the world moves and the finish line moves with it. Chaos, when it is kind, changes the task instead of the person. A traveller set on finding a single lost relic stumbles into a village that needs a bridge, and by the time the bridge is built, the relic seems less lost. A scientist trying to stop time learns to slow it by baking with a neighbour every morning. Goals turn into relationships. Endings turn into gatherings. What looked like failure becomes a shared life. None of this means chaos stops frightening people. Fear is honest. The body flinches before the mind understands. But ooh learns a new reflex. Curiosity after flinch. Step back, breathe, and ask, is this harm or is this change? If it's harm, defend. If it's change, listen. Chaos asks for listeners more than it asks for warriors. This is where the Lich's shadow helps define the border. The Lich is purpose without mercy, the straight line that cuts through everything for the sake of an ending. Chaos, by contrast, meanders. It wastes time in ways that save lives. The Lich tightens, chaos loosens. The Lich forbids play. Chaos is play. Not childishness, but the serious willingness to test what might happen if we stop pretending we know. In that spirit, even old enemies become improvisers instead of statues locked into roles. Someone who was the villain one morning might be the helper by evening, because chaos gave them a crack to step through. Princess Bubblegum begins to redesign governance with this in mind. Not less responsibility, but more elasticity. Laws that bend instead of snap. Systems that expect surprise and dignify it instead of punishing it, a city that can change its own mind without shattering. She learns to treat crises like rehearsals, not performance failures, but opportunities to teach the whole cast how to listen. By planning for improvisation, she stops trying to defeat chaos and starts partnering with it. Jake always knew this. He made a philosophy of wobble. Stretch, relax, try again. His generosity was the kind you can't legislate. The permission he gave everyone in the room to be a little weird and therefore honest. After the world softened, people realized he had been speaking chaos's kind language all along. In a world that worshipped the straight line, Jake showed that the curve gets you there smiling. The wilderness teaches it too. Forests that once punished, straying from the path, now keep their paths wide and their edges interesting. Rivers accept detours and show travellers sandbars that weren't on any map. Mountains open lungs for hikers who didn't mean to climb them and send them home with better breathing. Nature has always been fluent in friendly unpredictability. Ooh finally develops the accent. Chaos also proves kind in grief. Grief wants neatness, a tidy narrative of before and after, but the heart doesn't work that way. It loops and surges and pauses. In the new era, the loops stop feeling like failures. People learn to let their mourning arrive out of order, without shame. A laugh inevitably interrupts a funeral story. A tear inevitably sneaks into a picnic. Chaos keeps emotion honest, and honesty is a form of mercy. When you can't predict your feelings, you must be gentle with them. That gentleness spills outward. There is a spiritual lesson hiding in all this movement. Chaos is not only the universe changing, it is the universe trusting you to change with it. The trust itself is kindness. It assumes you are capable of learning in public, of adjusting without losing your dignity, of surprising yourself in ways that make life larger. GOLB's softened silence extends that trust like a hand. He doesn't hand you a plan, he hands you room. This is why the smallest chaotic gifts become ethical. A missed train teaches patience that later saves a quarrel. A broken tool teaches cooperation that later saves a village. A wrong turn leads two people to share water, then stories, then kinship. The random becomes relational. Luck becomes responsibility. You were diverted, therefore you owe tenderness to what you found. That is how chaos becomes a quiet law. Artists and builders feel the law most directly. The best songs occur when the wrong chord lands exactly where the heart needed it. The best buildings arise when a beam has to curve around a tree instead of deleting it. Constraints appear in the middle of the sketch and turn it from clever to true. Chaos hands you the shape that keeps the world included. You do not bulldoze the unexpected, you choreograph it. The cosmic beings adjust in kind. Death's realm, once austere, now allows unplanned conversations at the threshold, not to undo the line between worlds, but to dignify the last improvisations of love. Prismo learns that some wishes do better when they arrive sideways, not as a perfect prize, but as a changed heart ready to recognize an imperfect one. Even the cosmic owl amends his roots. A dream once carried to frighten is detoured to teach. The detour is the teaching. All of this lives under one large truth. The void has stopped resenting variety. In ages past, variety looked like a challenge to the silence. Now it looks like its favourite instrument. GOLB's awareness no longer presses the world back into a single shape. It delights as the world refuses to repeat itself. The refusal is orderly, but it isn't obedient. It is merciful mischief. That mischief is essential for justice. Justice that cannot accommodate surprise becomes cruelty with paperwork. The kindness of chaos keeps justice honest by reminding it that cases are people and people are moving. Mercy without motion petrifies into indulgence. Order without motion petrifies into punishment. Chaos keeps both from petrifying. It shakes the snow globe so that every flake has a chance to land somewhere more truthful. In ordinary rooms, this looks like second chances that aren't performative. A baker burns a batch, and the entire morning shifts. Freebies at the counter, new friends at the benches, a recipe discovered because today's failure wanted cinnamon, where yesterday's success insisted on none. A teacher misreads a moment and apologizes out loud, and the class learns more from the apology than the lesson. Authority loosens without disappearing. Respect deepens. No one pretends to be perfect. Everyone practices being good. Even danger benefits from the lesson. Ooh still has teeth. It still needs courage. But courage under the kindness of chaos is less about domination and more about attention. The hero's first move becomes wait and see, not strike. Monsters that were once punished for existing are understood for needing. The ones that still choose harm are opposed without hatred. Opposition becomes precise instead of loud. Precision is another form of kindness, doing only what must be done so that what can be spared is spared. There is an image that appears in the dreams of those who listen closely to the land, a vast, formless presence with many soft hands, catching falling objects and rearranging them into a pattern no one planned but everyone recognizes. The dream never names the presence. It doesn't need to. The pattern is recognition enough, a scatter becoming a mosaic. That is what the kindness of chaos does, not impose, but compose. Betty's gift to the void makes this composing possible. Before, chaos returned everything to potential with a kind of indifferent efficiency. After her, the return is considerate. The break can become an invitation. The spillage can become a path. The detour can become a festival. It is still chaos. Nothing is guaranteed. But there is a new tendency toward flourishing if hands meet it with care. The universe takes your cue. If you welcome chance with responsibility, chance will repay you with meaning. This is why games become sacred in OO. Not competitions that seek domination, but games that reward listening. Improvisational theatre in a square, card games where rules bend to include a newcomer, music circles, where the beat slows when someone falls behind, and speeds when someone is ready to fly. Play becomes practice for a moral life in a changing world. You learn to delight in surprise and to protect the people surprised alongside you. The ethic is simple: make room. Make room becomes a kind of prayer. People write it on paper, hung near doors, and whisper it before decisions. It is the opposite of conquest and the sibling of courage, where order says, hold the line, and mercy says, soften the line. The kindness of chaos says, let the line move so that life can keep crossing it. Streets widen, schedules loosen, arguments acquire chairs for late arrivals. None of this would persuade the old lich. That voice still lives wherever purpose wants to be pure at the cost of people. But OO has learned to hear that purity as brittle. The world now knows that the straightest road is rarely the kindest road. And in a world held by a silence that remembers, kindness is the road that lasts. The map quietly updates. Scenic routes become fastest by another measure, the time it takes for a heart to stay soft. And what of GOLB? He remains what he has always been, the condition for everything. But where his presence once felt like a certainty bearing down, it now feels like an option opening. The universe's oldest fact offers its oldest favour. room enough for newness. Chaos, once the rumour of his approach, is now the evidence of his trusts. He trusts the living to make something tender out of surprises. He trusts them enough to keep surprising them. If you stand at the edge of a market at dusk, you can see the lesson happen in one small frame. A cartwheel breaks, fruit spills, strangers shout and then laugh, hands gather what they can, children invent a game with the pieces that can't be sold. The seller's shoulders fall and then ease when someone slips a coin into their palm. A musician nearby changes key to match the new mood. The day finds a rhythm none of them would have chosen, and all of them will remember. Nothing went as planned, everything went as life. This is the kindness of chaos, not that it prevents the wheel from breaking, but that it turns the break into belonging. Not that it saves you from change, but that it changes you into someone who can save others. Not that it eliminates fear, but that it teaches curiosity to go next. Ooh does not worship chaos. It befriends it. It lets chaos teach it how to be gentle while moving. It lets surprise become a civic virtue. It lets wrong notes become jazz. It lets detours become neighborhoods. It lets inconvenience become culture. The world is still fragile. It is fragile in wiser ways. Plans are made humbly. Systems are built with hinges. Hearts are taught to turn without tearing. And under everything, the softened silence watches with interest, storing the afterglow of every quick kindness born from a sudden shift. What was once a universe hungry to erase has become a universe eager to include. So when tomorrow arrives crooked, and it will, the people of Oo will do what they've practiced. Inhale, tilt, smile, make room. They'll make a circle around what fell and decide, together, what it wants to be now. The circle will look a little like a choir, and a little like a workshop, and a little like a family. It will be all three, because chaos, when welcomed, turns strangers into each. That is the secret the land finally learned from a silent God who learned to feel. The wild is not against you. If you meet it with care, it will meet you with gifts. The gifts will not be the ones you asked for. They will be the ones that make you capable of asking better. And somewhere, beyond words, the silence will hum its pleased approval. Not louder than the living, never louder, but low and steady, like a bass track beneath a city, learning to improvise its way toward kindness. The song won't end. It will keep changing keys. That's the point. Because in the end, the kindness of chaos is simply this: the world's most ancient permission to grow. When the stories of Oo are finally told and retold, long after the last adventure has been sung into myth, one presence will still remain, not in the foreground, not demanding worship or fear, but in the quiet between every heartbeat of the tale. That presence is GOLB. He was once called Chaos, then Nothingness, then God, then Doom. But all those words were just guesses in the dark. The truth of GOLB was never destruction. It was understanding, the kind that takes eternity to learn. To know what GOLB means, you have to start where the story ends, in stillness. The stillness, after mercy, after memory, after chaos, has turned kind. The stillness where no one is fighting, where no one is searching for meaning, because they are already inside it. That stillness is not empty, it hums. It is full of the awareness that the universe has of itself, the echo of all it has seen and loved and lost. That hum is GOLB. Once the world mistook that hum for terror. Anything that vast, anything that's silent, looked like the end. But the more the people of Oo lived, the more they realized that silence wasn't swallowing them, it was listening. It had always been listening. GOLB was the pause that allowed everything else to speak. He was the moment between breaths where choice lives. That's why he could never be defeated. You can't defeat space. You can only fill it. You can't destroy stillness. You can only learn to move inside it with grace. When Betty brought love into GOLB, she didn't change his nature. She revealed it. She showed that the silence at the root of all things was not void, but potential. And potential is mercy waiting to be remembered. Over time, people stopped drawing GOLB as a monster. Children sketched him as a swirl of colours, an eye that looked both inward and outward, or a shape made of shapes. Artists began to paint his presence in the spaces between figures, in the light falling on a table, in the pause before a song's final chord. He became the symbol of what holds everything else together without owning it, the glue of existence that never demands credit. Theologians of began to describe him in paradoxes. He is the first question and the last answer, the silence that allows laughter to be heard, the dream that lets waking mean something, the destruction that makes creation real, the unknowable that keeps knowledge humble. They were all right in their own ways, and none of them were entirely right. GOLB isn't a statement. He's the punctuation at the end of one, the mark that lets it rest. The philosophers said something similar, but softer. GOLB is the feeling that everything will eventually find a place to belong, even pain, especially pain, because a universe that forgets nothing also forgets no one. Every joy, every loss, every effort to love, every failure to understand, it all settles somewhere in that vast stillness, not as waste, but as part of a pattern too large to see. Simon begins to understand this in his quietest hours. He spends his days teaching, listening, walking, existing without performance. He no longer tries to decode the universe, he trusts it. Sometimes, while looking at the sky, he feels a calm that isn't his own, the same calm that passed through Betty when she stepped into GOLB. He doesn't call it a miracle, he just calls it peace. That peace is GOLB. Marceline sings into that same peace. Her songs no longer ask the universe why, they thank it. The questions are still there, they always will be, but now they carry melody instead of fear. She has learned that not every mystery needs solving. Some just need singing. GOLB is in the music she leaves unfinished, in the note she lets fade. Princess Bubblegum, once the mind that sought mastery over every variable, begins to love what she can't predict. She keeps experimenting, but she no longer demands results. She calls her failures correspondence. Every experiment, she says, is a letter to the dact unknown, and the unknown always writes back, not in formulas, but in forms. The flower that grows in the wrong petri dish, the laughter that breaks tension, the dream that changes policy. GOLB, she realizes, is correspondence returned. Even the great cosmic beings evolve in his quiet. Prismo's realm becomes warmer, his wishes less transactional, more like collaborations. The cosmic owl dreams brighter, less doom and more guidance. Death stops guarding the line so sternly and instead becomes a curator, helping souls remember the light they've added to the world before they rest. Each of them, in their way, has learned what GOLB really is, the universe's ability to include everything, even its contradictions, and still be whole. This inclusion is his final gift. GOLB shows that opposites are not enemies. Chaos needs order to have shape. Mercy needs justice to have meaning. Life needs death to stay honest. Love needs loss to stay awake. GOLB contains them all without needing them to agree. He is not the balance point. He is the field in which balance happens. Without him, harmony would have nowhere to stand. In the oldest myths, gods wanted devotion. GOLB never wanted that. He wanted participation. To live kindly in U now is to participate in GOLB, to fill the silence with music, to fill the blankness with compassion, to fill the uncertainty with trust. Every act of gentleness, every moment of creation, every brave acceptance of change is a prayer spoken in his true language. That language is not words, but behavior. It says, I know this could end, and I love it anyway. It says, I will build again, even knowing it will break. It says, I understand that nothing is forever, and that's why it matters. These are the sentences written on the world now, each one a verse in the quiet scripture of GOLB. You can see his meaning everywhere once you learn how to look, in how the tide retreats only to return, in how trees shed their leaves so they can grow new ones, in how people change and forgive and try again. GOLB is not the end of stories. He is why stories can end and begin again at all. For the people of U, this realization changes worship. Temples become open-air spaces. There are no idols, only echoes, places built to frame silence so you can hear it listening back. In those spaces, people come not to plead but to pause. They come to sit in the same quiet Betty once stepped into, to feel that hum beneath everything, to remember that they too are part of the stillness that feels. Some call that quiet the kindness of endings. Others call it the promise of beginning. Most just call it peace. Whatever the name, it's the same thing. The awareness that even the wildest chaos, the deepest grief, the brightest joy, and the longest love all fit inside one heartbeat of understanding. That heartbeat is GOLB. He doesn't watch from above. He doesn't decide. He doesn't intervene. He simply holds, endlessly, tenderly, without favour. He is the space that allows life to mean anything at all. And now that he can feel, that space hums with care. U continues, as it always has, changing, singing, laughing, crying. Empires rise and fall. Rivers shift. Children are born into new ages of light. But through it all, the hum remains. The silence beneath sound, the peace beneath movement, the love beneath fear. It's not something to understand anymore. It's something to live inside. And so the meaning of GOLB is not fear, not power, not even balance. The meaning of GOLB is continuance, the proof that nothing is ever truly lost. It only changes its form and keeps going. Love becomes memory. Memory becomes light. Light becomes silence. And silence becomes the space for new love to begin again. That's why his presence is no longer drawn as horror, but as horizon. Every dawn in U now begins with that same soft truth. The world is unfinished, and that's beautiful. The silence will hold whatever comes next. Betty's love still lives there, diffused through the infinite. GOLB still hums, eternal and tender. The people still dream. And the universe, forever learning from itself, keeps unfolding. Because in the end, GOLB isn't the monster at the edge of the story. He is the story's permission to continue, quietly, compassionately, forever.